The Atlanta Falcons finished the 2022 season with a 7-10 record and missed the playoffs for the fifth consecutive season. And with a team that hasn't made the playoffs since 2017, it's easy to overlook them and to think, oh, okay, they have a second-year quarterback in Desmond Ridder, who threw just 115 passes last year, and they'll probably finish with anywhere from 5 to 7 wins this year, and again miss the playoffs for the sixth consecutive year. And I am here to say the Falcons are quietly building a very good team, and I really like what this franchise has going for them, and I love their long-term outlook. Some things are going to have to bounce their way in 2023, but this team is pretty open as to what their game plan will be this year and what they're going to try and do to beat you. And it's run the football. And the Atlanta Falcons are going to try and bully their way into the postseason this year. And I've been critical of this team in the past, and if you are a Falcons fan, you may remember that, and we will address that too. But the Falcons are an extremely tough team, and they're going to be a pain in the rear end every single Sunday. But how far can they realistically go? Well, we're going to discuss that in today's video. Now let's begin. And we are starting today's video by discussing the background of the Falcons roster and ultimately the philosophy of what they're going to try and do offensively this year. The obvious answer is, of course, run the ball, but I do want to go back in time a little bit. Before Arthur Smith took over as the Falcons head coach in 2021, he was with the Titans for nearly a decade, and he was even the Titans offensive coordinator in what were Ryan Tannehill's best years of his career in 2019 and 2020, and ultimately when the Titans went to the AFC Championship game in 2019, after shocking everyone by beating the Patriots in what was Tom Brady's final game as a Patriot, and going into Baltimore and beating the Lamar Jackson MVP-led Ravens. This was also during a 2-year span in which franchise running back Derrick Henry would rush for over 3,500 yards and 33 rushing touchdowns. And how that brings us to the present day is the Falcons are going to try and implement that type of success into this year's offense. But what gets lost from those Titan years is it was not just Derrick Henry. They had a receiver go for over 1,000 yards in each of his first 2 years by the name of A.J. Brown. And when you look at this Falcons offense this year, it's not out of the question for Drake London to have the type of success A.J. Brown had in those first 2 years. And while I don't think Bijan will have 3,500 rushing yards in the first 2 years of his career and have 16 and 17 rushing touchdowns in 2023 and 2024, you can see what Arthur and GM Terry Fontenot are trying to do. They have a dominant offensive line led by the second-team All-Pro guard in Chris Lindstrom, and right tackle Caleb McGarry really came into his own last year and stepped up. And this paved the way for 2022 fifth-rounder Tyler Algier, who would go on to have over 1,000 rushing yards in his rookie season. The only big difference between those years with the Titans and this year with the Falcons in terms of what Arthur is going to try to do offensively is he probably does not want to give Bijan 303 carries like Derrick had in 2019 or 378 carries like Derrick had in 2020. And because Bijan was drafted 8th overall, there's this assumption or belief that Tyler Algier is going to be completely phased out of the offense, and I do not think that's the case at all. And while yes, Bijan will obviously get more carries than him this year, and understandably so given the draft capital the Falcons spent on him, Atlanta will also do what they can to protect both Bijan and Tyler so this team can seriously compete down the stretch of the 2023 season. The Falcons drafted Bijan with the intention of him being their starting running back for not just the next 3 or 4 years, but for the next 6 or 7 years, and in the sense of Bijan as a draft prospect, he was the best since Saquon Barkley in 2018 and possibly even the best running back prospect since Adrian Peterson in 2007. And the point of bringing this up is Atlanta is not going to want to run Bijan into the ground. They don't want him to have 400 carries in his rookie year and be past his prime by midway through the 2025 season because he already has 1,200 career NFL carries by then. So I do think Bijan and Tyler Algier are going to be a hell of a duo to try and stop for all 4 quarters, and that goes back to the Falcons being a very tough team. It's one thing to beat an NFL team and have an opposing quarterback throw 3 interceptions when their game plan was to throw the ball most of the game anyway. but when you know heading into the week that you're going up against this road-grading offensive line, along with not one, but two good options at running back, nobody is going to step up this year and say, man, I cannot wait to play the Falcons. One of the only concerns I have with this team is if they get down early and big, it's going to be tough for this team to come from behind. And we saw that last year when Joe Burrow threw for over 475 yards and 3 touchdowns, as the Bengals were on their way to a 35-17 win. But out of the 10 losses Atlanta had last year, it may surprise you that only 2 of those losses were by more than 1 score, meaning they were in every game, and having Marcus Mariota as your starting quarterback for most of the year will, a lot of the time, set you up to lose or just simply not win games because you don't have the quarterback to help put teams away. And for as much as I've been talking up the Falcons and how excited I am for them this year, the magical question is, how many games can they realistically win in 2023? Because while Falcons fans want Desmond Ridder to be the long-term guy, obviously, as every franchise would, what can he do as a starter this year? And the good news for Desmond is he won't have to do that much because the Falcons have a solid second-year receiver in Drake London, and they have, from a talent standpoint, one of the best tight ends in all of football in Kyle Pitts. And that's another reason why I like the Falcons' outlook so much this year. If you want to put 8 men in the box and play single high and basically leave your corners on islands, well, Atlanta can have Kyle Pitts and Drake London line up outside, and good luck stopping both guys while having to deal with the ground game. And that's the problem opposing defensive coordinators are going to face this year. How do we stop the team that finished 3rd in rushing yards last year as a team and 4th in yards per carry, while having a true one-of-one player in Kyle Pitts and a good receiver in Drake London on the other side? And the short answer is, hope Desmond Ridder makes mistakes. Because over the course of a game, with Atlanta being able to keep both backs fresh, it's going to be a hard-fought day defensively. But the Falcons also improved on the defensive side of the ball this offseason, which was much needed, as they had a singular player have over 5 sacks last year, and that was Grady Jarrett. This offseason, they signed Calais Campbell, David Onyemata, and Caden Ellis to help with this, and I don't think Atlanta will be one of the more dominant defensive lines in pass rush in 2023, but I do think they'll be respectable and, at minimum, help out the secondary, which is huge and something they did not do a good job of last year. Atlanta had just 21 sacks all year, which was second to last in the NFL, ahead of only the Bears, who of course had the #1 overall pick, and get this, they were 6 full sacks behind the 3rd to last place team in sacks, which was the Raiders with 27. And when you cannot generate any sort of pass rush consistently, it's pretty simple for opposing teams. Drop back, have a cup of tea, look up, find an open receiver, and get chunk plays. And that happened a lot last year against the Falcons, as they finished 25th in passing yards allowed, 23rd in passing touchdowns allowed, and 29th in net yards per passing attempt. And perhaps what was the worst for the Falcons defense last year was finishing last in plays per drive and average yards allowed per drive because they couldn't get off the field. And the offensive strategy for this team in turn will help out the defense this year, because if the opposing offense is not on the field, it's simple. They can't score. And by addressing the trenches in a big way this offseason, I would be extremely surprised if Atlanta is dead last defensively in these categories this year. And if they are, well, it's a problem. But through running the football offensively and not being out on the field for extended times defensively, their team will also not be as fatigued when push comes to shove late in the year. And in a 17-game marathon of a season, any little bit to save a team's stamina is huge. And that is without a doubt one of the biggest goals Arthur Smith has entering the year, and that's to improve in time of possession. Within this, and within adding improvements along the defensive line, I do think that will play a part in AJ Terrell getting back to the player he was in 2021. And the Falcons very quietly have a good secondary, as they also added Jesse Bates from the Bengals this offseason, and even traded for former number 3 overall pick in corner Jeff Okudah. Okudah was carted off early in training camp, and as I record this, they are optimistic he will return early in the year. And although he is entering his 4th year, he was drafted young and is still just 24 years old. So all in all, I really like the Falcons secondary moving forward. Second-year pass rusher Arnold Ebiketie had 28 pressures as a rookie last year, and that was in 303 pass rushing snaps, so if he has a full season of work, he could easily be a second or third rusher for them and accumulate 45 pressures or more this year, which would be huge. It would help out Grady Jarrett, it would help out Calais Campbell, and it would help out the secondary too. And despite Atlanta finishing 23rd in points allowed per game last year, 8 one-score losses in 2022 is what I continue to go back to, and why I think they will be a solid team this year. Their offense didn't come close to maximizing what they could do in the passing game last year, and Falcons fans, I hate to use this term, but they had some very Falcons losses last year. And one reason I was critical of them earlier in the offseason was before Lamar Jackson signed his deal, there was a point where teams could have traded 2 first-round picks and get him. Yes, they would have had to pay him, but within that same time frame, I thought the Falcons were on the cusp of trading up from the number 8 overall pick into the top 3 to go get Anthony Richardson. And I was very frustrated with them because I thought they would trade the same capital for an unproven player in Richardson when they could have traded for a former MVP winner. So I do want to apologize to Falcons fans because I like what they've done with the overall roster outside of the quarterback position since then. They addressed a ton of holes defensively, and while I do have my concerns with Desmond Ridder, let's be fair for a minute. Everyone has their concerns with Desmond Ridder, and nobody one way or another is saying heading into 2023 that, hey, Desmond will throw for 35 touchdowns this year, or hey, Desmond is going to be even worse than Mariota this year and handcuff the Falcons. But at the end of the day, heading into the 2023 season, I like what the Falcons have going for them outside of the quarterback position. And this question I ask pertains to them not just for this year, but the future as well, because the goal isn't to have 7 or 8 wins every year. The goal is, how can we win the division and then win multiple playoff games in order to get to the Super Bowl? And my concern with them is heading into this year, how do we go into Philly or San Francisco and win? How do we go up with the best of the best in their place and win? And I ask this because the Falcons internally think they can do damage this year. They believe in Desmond, and they of course believe in everyone else in the offense, whether it's Bijan, Tyler, Drake, or Kyle, and they need that next step from the quarterback position. As we know, the NFC South is not a loaded division by any means this year, and the goal for Atlanta entering each and every game is simple. Win or keep the turnover margin even, run the ball, do not give up more than 24 points, run the ball, and don't let Kyle Pitts completely out to dry like they did last year. They have playmakers on offense everywhere, and they will improve defensively. And I know a lot of people thought once the Saints got Derek Carr that they would automatically win the NFC South, but do not count out the 2023 Atlanta Falcons. The team MVP, breakout players, ceiling, and floor are on the screen, and I hope you enjoyed, and if you did, please like the video and subscribe, as only about 24% of people watching are subscribed, and it makes a massive difference. Check out Underdog Fantasy with the link in the description, as you get a free $100 deposit match, and maybe place a future on a guy like Bijan Robinson, or even a week 1 prop, as they are now out, and you can place some coin in Bijan Robinson's NFL debut. Again, use the link in the description for the free $100 deposit match, and I hope you enjoyed, and until the next team preview, please be safe and have a great day. Love you guys.